Hello and welcome to another episode of Wicked Weird with New England Queenie. I'm New England Queenie. It's been a hot minute since I have recorded an episode, but I'm back and I definitely have a lot to cover tonight. My initial intention for this episode was to talk about Antarctica and the secret alien bases that are rumored to be there. As I was writing it, so many things started to happen, and it seemed as though every day there was some new sighting or news story blowing up and, well, let's just face the truth. Shit is definitely going down, guys. We started off the new year strong, with the incident at the Bayside Marketplace in Miami, Florida, and that story alone is worth an entire episode. Seriously, when I heard about the hundreds of police officers that showed up for a group of kids playing around with fireworks, I found it hard to swallow that was the reason. Hundreds of officers for kids with fireworks? I don't think so. Now, if you're not familiar with the story, buckle up because this is wicked weird. According to witnesses, on January 1st, what appeared to be 10 to 15-foot tall shadow figures emerged from some kind of portal right in the middle of the mall. You heard that right. Giant smoky brown shadow figures that weren't quite solid, but not really transparent showed up and were moving about the mall in Miami. Witnesses who saw these beings claimed they seemed to glitch in and out, and each time they disappeared they would reappear much further away from where they had just been. Many tried to record these figures on their phones, but had difficulty, probably because they were also running and screaming in fear. Who could blame them, though? I'd probably book it as fast as I could if I saw something so weird. For those who managed to get some of this recorded, they were met with difficulty trying to exit the scene with their videos, as the police who responded ended up confiscating their phones and eliminating the chance for the rest of us to see these creatures. I reached out to a witness I found on TikTok who, out of fear of what the consequences would be for speaking out, ended up deleting his TikTok describing the scene. To protect his identity, we have disguised his voice and are using a different name, allowing him to speak freely. Welcome to Wicked Weird, Justin. Thank you so much for taking the time tonight to tell us your story.
Thank you.
So, Justin, what happened New Year's Day?
Well, I was out with my family just shopping and grabbing something to eat, and my youngest, he is 14, saw some kind of big shadow coming at us kind of fast. I'm a big guy, and I'm not shaken up all that easily. But I can tell you what we saw was no joke, and it scared the shit out of me.
Oh my God. What did you do?
We ran. My son tried to get it on his phone, but this thing kept disappearing and then reappearing. Have you ever seen those ghost movies? Where the ghost kind of glitches and moved really fast, and before you know it the ghost is right in front of you? It kind of looked like that. I didn't see any portal like some others said they saw, but we all saw that creature. I don't think I had ever been so scared before. It was probably about twice my height. 12 feet tall. I couldn't really see any face. It was just a big human-shaped giant smoky being. I'd never seen anything like it. It looked confused. Scared. Like it was lost. I got the feeling it was there by accident.
I did hear multiple reports from witnesses saying they seemed confused. Did they seem like they were a threat at all?
No. Looking back, I don't think they were there to hurt anyone. We ran out of fear of the unknown. I had my kids there and I was afraid I wouldn't be able to protect them. It's gonna sound crazy, but I really thought there was some kind of invasion happening. Whether these things were malicious or not, wasn't a risk I was willing to take. We didn't know what they were. I grew up Catholic, and the thought that these were some kind of demon or even angels was a real fear at the time. I was afraid they were there to signal the coming apocalypse. The only thing I wanted to do was get my family out of there and as far away as we could get. But it wasn't easy getting out of there.
Why?
First of all, everyone was freaking out. They were just running and screaming. I was afraid my wife would get knocked down and trampled. Then when we reached the exit there were cops everywhere. They were stopping everyone and taking away their phones. We had our phones taken and they made us unlock them to search the pictures. They made my son delete the video he took even though he didn't have any images of the creature. The rest of my family didn't record anything. We were stopped a few times by police and they just kept checking our phones. It was total chaos. We finally got to our car, but we still had to wait to leave because of all the police. The roads were full of them. I started talking to another family who was there, and one told me there was some kind of raid happening, and they saw police going in the mall all armored up. We finally were able to leave and go home, and I immediately checked the radio and TV news to see if there was anything about it. I didn't see anything about the aliens. They were saying some kids with fireworks had been shooting them off at each other in the mall. We knew that wasn't what happened, and I went searching the internet and found some posts on TikTok. I ended up making my own video, but my wife made me take it down because she was afraid of what could happen if the government saw I posted what we saw. I can understand that. After thinking about it, I also thought it was better not to leave it up. I didn't know what kind of trouble it would get me in. I definitely didn't want to have an issue with work either.
Your wife was probably right. And I know you wanted to tell people what you saw, and I am so glad I could give you a way to tell us about what really happened.
And I really appreciate the opportunity to come forward. I really think people need to know the truth. I didn't believe before all of this happened. Now that I have seen these beings, I agree with the people who are fighting to get the truth out. Our government shouldn't be hiding this from us. From what I saw, it looks like these things want to be seen, and for transparency from our government. I don't think they are leaving the decision to hide this up to the government anymore. They want us to know the truth.
Justin, what do you think the truth is?
That's a great question. I don't know the whole answer, but I do know whatever these things are, they are here. And I think they always have been.
Thank you for sharing this incredible story. You have been an outstanding surprise guest tonight.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
In addition to what Justin told me, there were reports of power outages and a no-fly zone over Miami during the incident. I don't know about you, but I think this is what I would have expected during such a historic event. The truth is coming whether the government wants it or not. I just hope we are ready. I had thought quite a bit about the confusion reported by witnesses. These beings seemed to be just as surprised as they were at their arrival. Some social media accounts have posted the confusion may be related to a mix-up in latitude and longitude that was used as a locator for where these beings were supposed to go. If the coordinates are reversed, then they take you right to Antarctica. And this is right where I wanted to talk about tonight. One thing I don't hear about often enough is who or what is in Antarctica. As far as we have been told, this continent is a haven for science, and several countries have bases where they study climate change, astronomy, biology of the animals and plants there, and atmospheric sciences. No single country can lay claim on Antarctica, but 7 nations do lay claim to pieces of this icy location. Other nations reserve the right to claim part of the area, including the USA, but what if I told you there are others there no one is telling you about? What if the location is used for more than just scientific research? Antarctica has always been fascinating to me for a whole bunch of reasons. I was always a child who absorbed information like a sponge, and I read encyclopedias for fun. I read about far-off places and history. I couldn't get enough. This story begins in the 1930s with a German dictator named Adolf Hitler. He was obsessed with the occult, extraterrestrials, and power. He had a goal to build a military power that would take over the world. He sent teams out to explore and claim a continent that no one else had. When these teams arrived in Antarctica, they did explore and even tried to physically drop little metal swastikas all over the continent, a plan that backfired when, due to a flight emergency, boxes and boxes filled with them had to be dumped to lighten the load. This is where, depending on who you believe, the story deviates from anything we'd consider normal. You see, Hitler supposedly had already met with extraterrestrials and wanted to be like them. The way he would do this would be to breed out whatever people who had less desirable traits. He wanted to create a race of superhumans and get as close to what the visitors were like. I've said before in a previous episode that the human race is a warrior species. Knowing this to be true provides an excellent reason to use our species as a tool in wars. There are constantly intergalactic wars happening. These extraterrestrial visitors were thousands of years ahead of us in technology, and the Nazi Party wanted all of it. A deal was struck. Now, it isn't any big secret anymore that the United States brought over more than 1,600 Nazi scientists and their families after the Second World War ended through Operation Paperclip. While many of these scientists were members of the party, including some who were leaders, not all of the scientists believed in the Nazi movement and were thrilled to be given the opportunity to come to the United States and start a new life working for the United States government instead of facing the charges hanging over them for the war crimes they committed. The Nazi Party had help from the deal they made with the extraterrestrials prior to the war, which provided Hitler's Germany with some of their own advanced technology, not enough for humans ever to exceed the capabilities of the alien race, but what they thought was enough to dominate the Earth against other humans. The technology developed as a result of the Germans' relationship with the aliens was valuable to the US military. So why did these visitors hand over the technology? What exactly did the extraterrestrials stand to gain from this deal? Buckle up because this is disturbing. It wasn't unusual for humans to fall into agreements and deals with the extraterrestrials who were visiting this planet. The United States is also guilty of this and benefited quite a bit when their own technological acquisitions from deals of their own were combined with the innovations the Germans brought from their own interactions and deals made. Part of the deals made with the Germans was for them to establish bases for their visitors somewhere they could continue to operate on Earth away from prying eyes and interference. This is where the continent of Antarctica comes in. After the Germans held expeditions to the continent and had laid claim to some of it, the bases were constructed. They are under the ice with entrances that are hidden from humans, other than the humans who are in partnership with them. These aliens also required access to sustenance. The issue is that this particular race of beings required sustenance that comes from humans. They required access to the humans for food. These are not the little gray aliens you have heard about. These are a species of reptoid beings called Draco. The Draco can only be described as nightmare fuel. 12 to 15 foot tall reptilian-type beings who I suspect were most likely the initial creators of dinosaurs. They are bipedal, covered in scaly skin, and have all the facial appearances of what a giant lizard-type being would most likely be imagined. They wear similar uniforms and hold no sympathy for the humans. So, these Draco beings are not the nicest species, which definitely would explain their interest in assisting a dictator bent on world domination with the creation of war machines, weapons, and vehicles. Their plan was to use the Nazi Party for their own needs, and the only thing stronger than the Draco hunger for humans as food was Hitler's hunger for power. We all know what happened in World War II, and the Germans were thankfully defeated. You would think at this point, the Draco threat was over and the Nazi Party was eliminated. We have been told Hitler died in a bunker by a self-inflicted gunshot wound and was found after that same bunker was destroyed by Allied forces' bombs. If the Draco narrative is to be believed, then Hitler didn't die in that bunker. Hitler was notoriously famous for having multiple imposters to act in his stead when he felt he would be vulnerable to attack. He had these men go through surgical and dental procedures to ensure there was no difference in appearance between his doppelgangers and himself. This allowed for Hitler to confuse his enemies who never knew for sure if the real Hitler was the one they were seeing. So when that bunker was destroyed, there is still a chance he wasn't the one in there, but may have already escaped to the base in Antarctica. This would mean that although they may have been defeated, the Nazi Party may have lived on and could have moved their operations to the bases they built with the Draco. Once they all had fled to either Antarctica or to South America, which is a whole other episode, they were able to continue to work with the Draco, and eventually there were treaties struck with countries who didn't want to go to war with an advanced species. This includes the United States. Yes, the United States is also part of a treaty with these beings, and it is nothing like what they had with the more benevolent beings we had previously heard of. This agreement meant the United States were now required to supply a certain number of people to the Draco for their own nefarious reasons, whether it be slavery or food, and as soldiers to fight in wars for the Draco. I know what you are thinking. This conspiracy theory is really dragging us down the rabbit hole, but just try to stay with me as we continue to dig into this. There are missing people reported every day, and some are never found again. They just disappeared. This theory seems to claim these people are taken by the government and given to the Draco. They never return, and we are not permitted to even question the Draco on this. Now, where are the Nazis in all of this? They are running the bases under the command of the Draco. In essence, they are running a lot more as the threat of the Draco has resulted in the entire world to submit. The Nazis were given the power so desired by the Draco. The bases in Antarctica are not the only bases in the solar system, though it acts almost like an intergalactic airport. There are tunnels under the ice and ground that in some cases lead to openings into the ocean. Since the Draco have such authority, they are the ones who control travel. At least they think they are in control of the travel, which seems to make sense when other species visit and must remain secretive. The United States government has created disinformation campaigns for decades to keep the Draco at bay and keep us from having any more galactic wars on this planet. The countries who have treaties with the Draco have effectively also made treaties with the Nazis who answer to the Draco. The United States sends soldiers to the Draco as fighters. These soldiers are trained from a very young age and are basically used to keep the Draco from losing any of their own species. They are sent across the galaxy as muscle to planets that in most cases are unable to fight back. There are many planets in our galaxy and they are in different stages of technological development. We have unfortunately reached a stage of development where we can be trained to use their technology and, since we are a warrior species, conquer these planets for the Draco. During the time these soldiers are part of this force, they answer to the Nazi officers. It really blows my mind when I think of the possibility of the Nazi Party still almost running the world through powers granted by the Draco. The Draco have also infiltrated our world governments and are in control at high levels or are influencing those in power. All the cargo, weapons, and soldiers are shipped to where they are needed, sometimes through what we would know as stargates. The Draco also have control over us as a species through a suppression they have implemented on Earth to keep us from advancing at a rate that would catch up to them or even outpace them with technology. This suppression is difficult to understand. It is some type of frequency that is created by a machine the Draco have. It disables the human brain from advancement and limits us to a certain level of intelligence as well as limits our lifespan. Now, I am probably either losing you on this or making you really think. But the ideas of aliens in Antarctica isn't anything new to those who are investigators of this. Evidence of their involvement in humankind can be found during the expedition of Admiral Byrd to Antarctica. The rumor is he was attacked by aerial phenomena which was described as flying discs who had weapons his ships were defenseless against. He lost many men and returned from his expedition with stories of seeing Nazi symbols on these vehicles that flew around them firing these weapons. If you look at scripture in the Bible, humans had considerably longer lifespans than we do now. What could have caused us to physically be unable to live as long as we did then? The Draco have been after us for centuries and have enslaved us as a species without us knowing. We provide them with food, supplies, soldiers, and bases while under the threat and suppression of them as they go about using us from their bases in Antarctica. You're thinking what I was when I first heard this. There are countries there now that have scientific stations who never mention seeing any Nazis, and they definitely aren't reporting large reptilian creatures trekking around the South Pole. Right? Well, as I said, we are under the control of these beings, and they have informed these countries to avoid the areas Dracos are inhabiting, or they will end up as food on the tables of these aliens. So although the scientists may not know what they are being kept from, they are still cooperating with their own governments. It is also important to note that not one country is allowed to claim Antarctica as their own. This is most likely because the Draco already claimed it and humans of the world have given over control to them and their Nazi officers. So, why don't we see anything when the satellites take photos from space? How can we have a population of Draco living in Antarctica and not see them? It's a small population to start with, and since they are primarily under the ground, there isn't much chance of spotting one on the surface. Even if you did, these creatures also have the ability to psychically alter perceptions and can make you think you are seeing something else, even appear human. So, what does all of this have to do with Miami? I have a theory these giant beings from the Bayside Marketplace may have been the Draco coming to our planet, but they screwed up their coordinates. These beings were glitching in and out because they were trying to stop the witnesses from seeing their actual physical form. Under normal circumstances, they would have already shape-shifted or psionically altered the perception of their true form so the humans wouldn't even notice them, which is how they finally exited the mall. By altering the perception of the humans, these beings easily blended in and slipped by the police and any government officials who arrived on the scene. Since the mall was right by the ocean, they were able to catch a ride from the Dracos already on planet and scoot right down to Antarctica through the ocean straight to the base under the ice. Once the authorities issued the no-fly zone and knocked out power nearby, the Dracos were able to escape without being tracked by anyone who shouldn't be aware of their existence. Our government assisted in the escape and covered up all evidence any witnesses may have collected by erasing videos and photos they had taken. You may think this is all far-fetched, and you are welcome to comment or come forward with your own evidence if you choose to do so. If you would like to come on the show with a story of your own and want to be kept anonymous, we will not use your image, name, or actual voice. Your stories are safe with me. The incident in Miami was just the beginning of some wicked weird happenings that are showing up every day. But that is all we have time for tonight. I want to thank you for joining me on this wicked weird journey. Please like, share, and subscribe to my podcast, Wicked Weird with New England Queenie, available on Spotify and anywhere you listen to podcasts. Good night, and remember to keep it weird.